Thanks to Joe Willie for coming on today. Let's see. There we go. Rich in Jersey. What's up, Rich?
Good afternoon, Mike. I'm going to miss having you in the car with me driving home every day.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
You know, back in the 80s, one of my favorite people to listen to on the radio was Bob Grant. And I met him once, and I asked him, what is the key to doing good interviews? And you can't just ask questions. You have to listen to the answers, because you might hear things that will lead to much more interesting questions than the ones you have written down. And when people compliment you on how you conduct interviews, I'm sure that they're not realizing, or maybe they are, that's exactly what you're doing. It's not a scripted thing. You just never know what's going to come up and where it's going to go next.
Well, I don't script interviews, so I just talk. I mean, it's all from my head, that stuff. I mean, I didn't script anything or prepare anything for Namath. I mean, I think I can do Namath without having to look up anything about him. I mean, I've watched him play. I even watched him play at Alabama. I've talked to people at Alabama about him who think he might have been the best player they ever had there. And Bear Bryant did say he was the best player, him and Ozzie Newsome. Leroy Jordan, who we mentioned, was a great player. There's no question. But he did say he was the best athlete and the best player he ever coached. Namath was very gifted and, did win a national championship in Alabama. And then obviously went on to his fame, and people, don't think his career was long enough. People don't think his career was good enough because after his first 4 or 5 years, he was very banged up and stuff. But he was an incredible talent. He really was remarkable. He could throw the ball as well as anybody ever. I mean, it's amazing how he threw the ball. And a lot like Marino, if you're looking for someone that kind of, held the ball high, got back quick in the setup, quick release. I mean, just an amazing. The thing about him was, if you ever got a chance to see him run out on the field with those white shoes, I mean, it was amazing how crazy people went. It was unbelievable how something as silly as just white shoes at that time was considered to be like earth-shattering. Just that he wore white shoes was such a. Think about how it's changed. I mean, now these guys, could wear anything and no one would even bat an eye. I mean, think of how outrageous the people are now in dress and everything else. Then him wearing white shoes was such a big deal. I can't even tell you. And then when he, Namath had some stuff that really, caused people the fur coat, the pantyhose commercial. I mean, you go down the line. I mean, with so many of them. First, it was that Noxzema commercial with Farrah Fawcett, which, people didn't realize even who she was. They just said, who is that blonde? And then it turned out to be Farrah Fawcett. But all the stuff, the Bachelor's 3, which I didn't even get to with him, all the different stuff. I mean, you have to understand how big Namath was. He was like the Beatles. He was that big. I mean, if Namath was going to make an appearance in New York City, there would be like thousands of people there. He could stop traffic. He was that big. And I've said many times that the guys who changed it, see, Mickey Mantle, to millions of us, to guys like me, he was an icon. I mean, he was everything to us. But Mickey was a baseball player. Joe DiMaggio, for all his, refinement, all his, ability, the legend of him, everything else, Monroe, was still a baseball player. Joe crossed over. He was like a cultural icon. He said people wanted to dress like Joe. They wanted to look like Joe. They wanted to be like Joe. I mean, that's how it was. Just like Ali. Ali, in a lot of different ways. Now, Ali brought other things into it. He brought in the Vietnam War. He brought in race. He brought in a whole bunch of stuff. So he crossed a lot of different barriers. But those are the two guys, to me, that changed everything. Ali and Namath. And I could tell you, I went to games, Shea Stadium, and people went nuts for him. I mean, even the sight of him coming onto the field, people used to go crazy. If you were a Jet fan that far back and you go that far back, I mean, everybody wanted to be Joe Namath. That's how he was. Just like, that was it. He was it. Ira in Staten Island, of course, was one of those people. Ira, what's up?
Mike, tremendous job with Joe. And you know what's amazing? people, they don't understand how he was. You're right. I compare him to the Beatles.
He was a rock star.
Unbelievable. And I'll tell you, you know what's amazing? He's still like that, Mike, because he was at one of the games earlier this year, and the women and men there just went crazy for him when they brought him in.
He's very humble, first of all. And, I've sat with Joe at the Super Bowl and talked, and Joe is in pretty good shape now. You wouldn't believe it for his knees don't, he had knee replacement. I had one, he's had two. I mean, his knees are not bad. I mean, he actually can get around okay. He really can. And he's done better than you think. I mean, especially once he had a little problem with drinking, which we know he gave up. And he's, since he had that Susie Colbert incident, he's done a lot better, and he really is in pretty good shape. He really is.
He really is, and it's funny. You look at statistics and career numbers.
No, they don't add up. They don't add up. Yeah.
But the Colt game with United in '72.
Oh, unbelievable!
He only completed 15 passes.
Richard Castor.
That 6 went for touchdowns, and he went for almost 500 yards. He averaged over 30 yards a pass.
They had 870-something yards a pass, in the two of them. Johnny, you had like 370-something, and Namath had like 496 or something like that. And Castor was the one catching those 80-yarders. Remember that? Guy was unbelievable.
That's right. Richard Castor, Eddie Bell. It's just amazing. Your younger generation, you have to look it up because you would never appreciate it unless you saw it.
And there was the game, and I didn't bring it up to him because we were tight on time, but I was going to bring up the one game that to me told the story, and that was the Niner game when he made the comeback, and he almost had the complete comeback. That was one of the most exciting games ever when he made the comeback. It was when he came in the game, and almost till he threw that last pick, he had the place going berserk.
I thought the upper decks were going to come down. That's how excited people were when that happened.
That game was unbelievable. I mean, really, you had to live it. And he was, I mean, to say there's been someone like him, there hasn't been. Not like that. It was unbelievable how big he was. As I said, Ali was that big. Ali was that big. Someone asked me recently in an interview I did, what event would you like to have been able to, be what do what you do and be there? And I said, no question. I said, there were three. March 8th, 1971, I could see Mike and the Mad Dog, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, in an empty Madison Square Garden, getting ready for Ali Frazier that night. And, as the people come in, and we get to sit there and watch the building open, the people come on the floor, the people start to come into the building while we're still working all those hours. And I said right there, the second one was the Giant Colt game, the Alan Amici game. And the third one was the, Bobby Thompson shot heard around the world. Those three would be the ones I'd like to be at those games. But first was the Ali Frazier. But the other thing I thought about was, to have been down at that Super Bowl III. I remember watching it on TV. And, that great picture that you see about Namath on the Chase Lounge with the guys around him. One of the guys sitting on the Chase Lounge was Brent Musburger. I talked to him about that many times. There was only like 8 guys or something there. And, it was so different then. But he was one of those guys sitting there asking Namath the questions. Anthony in Red Bank. What's up, Anthony?
How you doing, Mike? Thanks
Good. What's
for taking my call and giving us 30 years of the gift of entertainment on the radio.
Thank you.
One quick point before I get to my main point is a caller mentioned, I think last week or a couple weeks ago, to quickly mention the 5 best coaches, worst coaches. If you could,
I didn't do that. I got to do that. I will do that. 5 best since I've been on in the last 30 years. 5 worst the last 30 years. I have to do that. I will do that today, I promise.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to say probably my most memorable moment on the fan of listening to you was when I think it was a couple of days after you and Dog split, or maybe the day after, and Dog's father, Tony, called up.
The same day. It was the next day of that Friday, yes. That was the day.
Yeah, I remember it was a Friday, and he got pretty emotional, and he was asking, I don't know what happened, and, is it all right if I call?
Yes.
And I think you got a little bit choked up.
It was very emotional, absolutely, and I remember it very well. And, he never did come on again, which is, he just probably never felt comfortable, but he never came on again. Tony's gone now. I mean, I went up and spoke at his funeral for Dog, but, he's gone now. But no, it's you're right. He did come on that day, and it was kind of a very emotional scene. It really was. Fritz in Oyster Bay. What's up, Fritz?
Hey, Mike. It's a privilege to bid you farewell and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. What's happening?
A couple of things before I talk about my Cowboys for a second here. I listening to Joe, he brought back a lot of memories. I mean, he was such a star. He made training camp something to go to. I mean, we always couldn't wait to go see him in that red jersey in Hofstra and watch him work out. I mean, you just felt like you were seeing an all-star, this mega star that, didn't exist before that,
No question. Bigger than life, no question about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, so with the Cowboys, and I I didn't always agree with you, especially when it came to my teams, but 1 o'clock, when there was something big going on, I was tuned right into you because I do respect your opinion. So I'll ask you about my Cowboys. If two things. One, what would you do to fix them besides making Sean Lee, bionic?
Amazing that they don't lose when he plays.
It's unbelievable.
Yep.
And the other thing is, assuming they don't make the playoffs because they really don't have a good advantage with these tiebreakers, do you keep Garrett?
Yes, they will. I don't think there's any question. They will keep Garrett because the owner loves him. I don't even think it's a debatable issue. I would be shocked if he got rid of Garrett for all the reasons I told you. Is that Garrett, does what he wants him to do. He really does. He absolutely does what he wants him to do. He allows Jerry to be Jerry, and you can say that, but a lot of coaches wouldn't do it. Now, whether you play baseball, football,